Hello, guys. Welcome to this podcast. Myself, Dr. Mandeep Saini, and we got Mr. Kasun Gomis from University of Central Lancashire. So, as we were talking about the research methods and doing dissertation with the literature review, Mr. Gomez is expert in literature review and writing research papers. We have done a lot of research. Now, since many of the students are trying to do the dissertation based on the literature review, which is the secondary research, the secondary data, I would say, not the secondary research. So there is a tool which is called Web of Science. So Mr. Gomez is going to show us Web of Science. So Kasim, could you please try to explain what is Web of Science and how we can use it for a dissertation or writing research paper, which is based on the literature review only?
Right. Well, first of all, thank you for having me again. So we talked about in the earlier podcast as well, research will be becoming of a key underpinning for any studies that we do, regardless. So one of the things that we learned, and like Mandeep said, when we were doing our research in itself, this is how we learned to carry out proper systematic literature reviews as well. So one of the databases we tend to use, one of the popular databases there are in academia is we call Web of Science. There are another databases called Scopus and da 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 da. But usually I tend to focus more and rely more on Web of Science because it's renowned to be very reliable and it doesn't
Authentic,
very
authentic
high
source.
integrity.
Yeah.
Yes, it is with high integrity, sort of like high quality articles and research pieces there. It is not a free. Sorry.
Sorry. No, normally, when student use Google Scholar to find articles, it can search the entire internet and
Yeah.
give the articles. Some could be authentic. Some there is possibility there is not they are not authentic.
Yeah.
So in Web of Science, you saying that it is much more authentic because it's peer reviewed journals and peer reviewed articles.
It's very quality controlled in a sense. So as example, I'm not discriminating Google Scholar. Google Scholar is a very good interactive tool as well. But if you search Google Scholar and if you don't really do a very thorough job in filtering your searches through, you might get some unrelated as well as unvalidated sources as your literature. What Web of Science and all those specific databases do is they filter it prior to having them in their database. So we know for a fact whatever we search and whatever we get from this Web of Science is basically something that it is authentic, is validated, like you said, peer reviewed and related as well. And I mentioned there are many other databases as well. As an example, for medicine science, they use PubMed and blah blah blah. For our sort of like science-related disciplines, we tend to use more towards Web of Science. Yeah, so that's the integration. Web of Science is not a free tool per se, right? Even though we claim it to be free, because almost every university has.
So Web of Science is not a free tool
Yeah.
because almost all the universities have the access to it.
Yeah. So they have actually subscribed, and in order to give sort of like support with academic integrity, they have made it available for every academic or every staff, every student member to allocate and log into that. So as an example, you might, if you search it through Google, let's say, or Internet Explorer or Firefox, if you just search Web of Science and click enter, you might not be able to get into and log into that platform. Whereas you might need to go towards your university encryption, you need to have that university access and then move towards Web of Science portal in itself. So yeah, it's when we say freely available, yes, in a nutshell, yes, it is. But yeah, you need to access it in a certain way.
Okay, yeah, that's good. But as long as because this podcast is mainly for the students who are doing dissertation in the UK or any other country, maybe Australia, Canada, I think Web of Science should be available to them as well through the
It's global. Yeah.
university library.
Yeah.
So that could be a really good tool for the students who's writing dissertation based on the literature review. So without any delay, let's get on the Web of Science. If you could please show us how can they use that database. And I believe you mentioned about that it can create some diagrams as well for them to analyze papers, what type of paper they are getting.
Yeah, so I'll show what sort of basics. So it's not in-depth analysis. At least that's a starting point of what you're going to do for a systematic literature review, or sort of like an in-detail analysis afterwards. So as an example, this becomes the baseline of even thorough analysis such as bibliometric or scientometric analysis of some in-detail analysis. So whatever the case that is, these steps and accessing Web of Science becomes the baseline. That's the foundation towards stepping stone towards a higher analysis context. So I hope you can see my screen. And
yes, yeah.
Not being too rude, I'll be.
Is that the library website?
So that's my UCLAN, so University of Central Lancashire library repository. So again, you might, if you want to show Dr. Mandeep, if you want to, show it from a Salford perspective, feel free to. But yeah, whatever the case, you can access into your library and whatever repository you have, and then simply search Web of Science and access to it. So basically, let's say I'm just going to search in general. I'm not being rude. I'm just looking into my other screen. So
yes,
please, yeah. So if I just search it like this, and I mind you, I've just searched it generally. So you might see conferences, proceeding papers coming into play. So you might need to filter it, looking at databases. So once you click databases, you'll be logged into the key link to the appropriate portal. So mine have a
the first step is to search on the library website, Web of Science.
Yes.
When it goes there, on the next window in the filters, you got databases. So
yes.
Click on databases, and then it will go to Web of Science.
Yeah, so mine is a double authenticated as well. Mine goes to a different SharePoint, and then I can click there to get into that.
Okay.
So sometimes it might be different. Let's say for Salford, I'm not entirely sure, but I'm just speculating. If you type in Web of Science, the first thing that you see might be the database in itself. If that's the case, you just click it, go towards the appropriate portal. But the key criteria is we are not searching for anything else. We are searching for a database here. So if anything doesn't come up, you need to filter it to a database and then appropriately access it.
In a nutshell, different universities can have different structure.
Yeah.
So just keep clicking until you reach that web page, which you can see now.
Yeah. So Web of Science have actually updated since last few years. So this is a much more refined, much more easy user interface once you actually know how to use it, which is given in any case. So I'm going to explain a little bit on what we see here, the interface we see here. So as you can see that it's powered. This is the Clarivate powered. We have Web of Science. We have the searching main tab here. And under here, you can see the language users, and then you can see all the products made available by Clarivate, which are available here. And usually you are requested to make a profile. You can log in through generally as well. If you're a researcher, if you're a profiled researcher, it would be better to have your profiles as well. Just for now, I'm using my general access, not my research profile access, just to explain things a little bit better.
Okay.
And in your left itinerary, you can see that there's a menu criteria. So there's marked lists, there's a search history, then your profile, as we just explained it earlier, and then saved searches and alerts. So this basically is a navigation towards whatever past searches you have done or whatever searches that you have done. So whatever context it is, you can access it through your menu at your left-hand side. However, the main predominant area for this web is here. So this is where we search. This is the entirety of the search collection, and the search trigger is here. So you can see it's actually divided into documents and researchers. So you can search researchers, basically authors, researchers, publicative authorities, or else you can search documents. The most prominent area to go towards is documents. And you can see here, it says that search in Web of Science core collection and what editions. So if you notice this, that means that they're saying that there are different databases. So depending on your background, depending on whatever context that you're looking into, you can actually prioritize that search category and then do your search. However, what we usually do is we use all databases, or we can use Web of Science core collection, depending on what we have. The only thing that's different is if you are looking at cross-sectional research, it would be better to look at all departments rather than the core collection in itself, right? But usually, if you are science-based, if you're looking at even cross and multidisciplinary research, the Web of Science core collection would be more than enough for you to go through. And afterwards, you can see editions. So then you can see there are citation indexes on different categories. So social sciences, arts and humanities, conference proceedings. So again, there's a filtration process in here. Even before you do your search, you can filter them in rather than doing it afterwards. So this is just to make your life a little bit easier rather than getting millions and millions of articles at the end of the day. So without doing that, you can actually filter it beforehand a little bit and then get your results. So in here, you can see that there's documents, there's topics, and then you can actually write anything in it. So these are my previous search histories as well. And you can see that there's add rows and there's advanced searches, there's add data ranges in there as well. And after scrolling, you can see that there are many searches that we have done. So this is basically your history and the latest alerts that you have been going through. So whatever recent searches that you have done, and what are the recent alerts from those searches that you're getting. So from this front page in itself, you are getting overview of what you're going to do and what you have done, right? So it's basically navigating past and the present for you.
So you don't have to go back again and type the keywords again and again. So you can go to recent search and then click, and it will show.
It will show it as easy as that.
Quite good.
Yeah. So again, few things in here. You can search by many sort of like criteria. So all fields means that you'll be searching throughout all the searchable fields, which is listed in here. You can search through topics, you can search through titles, you can search by author, you can search by publication titles, you can search by years. So there's a huge array of criteria that you can search through, right? And depending on what you have, depending on what you're looking at, depending on what sort of data that you'll be looking at, or depending on what sort of area that you'll be looking at, you can select these as appropriately as much as possible, and then carry out your search. Something that I do is, if I have a designated topic, I would search that topic first and then filter it through and through by adding rows.
So as an example, a student want to do research in your topic, which is, let's say, quantity surveying.
Yeah.
In quantity surveying, they have an idea that they want to do some research in quantity surveying. So let's take it in a basic way, that okay, just to find out how many articles are available or which articles are available on quantity surveying. So let's take it that example and work on it.
Yeah. So I was right. So topic, right, and let's say quantity surveying, right? So that's the topic, right? And you can add row, right? So this is a function that I was going to talk about earlier, but now I can talk about it. So there is functions that you can do, like and, or, So
So
what we can do is,
Boolean operators.
I'm sorry.
Boolean operators are inbuilt
Yes.
functions. Okay.
Boolean operators. So what we can do is we can find out whether we can want those categories and criteria to be mutually exclusive or inclusive, or whatever function that we would lead to as well. So as you said, so Boolean operators as it is. So whenever you're creating your search strings in your dissertations, or it might be applicable for your day-to-day assignment as well, you can create a search string, and then you can actually have each and every criteria alongside here. So we'll say and we'll say we'll be looking at all fields. Oops. Right. Okay. So let's say circular economics, or let's say cost management rather. You might not get.
Okay. So in that case, if somebody have a title, let's suppose the research title is cost management in quantity surveying.
Yeah.
So they can have those two keywords, and they are joining those keywords with and here.
Yes.
Okay. So
Yes.
it is going to search the articles with quantity surveying and the cost management. It will combine. So whichever the article has the cost management and the quantity surveying, it will display that.
Yes.
So
again, it's key that you know what are you searching for. So if I want either quantity surveying or either cost management, I would have used or here.
Okay.
So in that case, it would select all articles that includes quantity surveying or cost management.
Okay.
If I select and, that means I need those two keywords in my search criteria. So quantity surveying as topic needs to be in a all field of cost management.
What if somebody only have quantity surveying and they don't have any idea they want to do the research on cost management or something else in quantity? So they can just keep the first row,
yeah,
and search on that.
Yes, you can do. So as an example, if I just delete this and just select topic for quantity surveying, you will get 14,744 articles, which you might know, which is nearly impossible to work around.
Yeah.
So then we can do a little bit. Oops, sorry, that was not what I was going to do. All right. Yeah. And then you can still say, oops, I went too back. Quantity surveying. You can add a row, and we can say we need cost management as well. So one thing when you are inputting this, we put them in brackets. So cost management. Right? Okay. So one thing that I have here, this is a regular procedure in search string basics. So we can have
why those inverted commas there?
Yeah, let me come to that afterwards as well. So those inverted commas mean that they are predominantly, those are the key things. Otherwise, they would just say, right, cost is one word. So they would imply cost versus quantity survey, or management versus quantity survey. So you say, right, that's cost management is a keyword that we are looking at. One other thing is, again, linking to what I'm going to do. So what if there are articles about cost managing, not management?
Okay.
That's the case. That wouldn't be search, isn't it? Because we are searching cost management, not managing. So what we tend to do is we tend to put an asterisk, and that prompts Web of Science or any search databases to search anything within those criteria. In the sense, it could pick up cost management, it picks up cost managing. So whatever that's finishing with that. So it selects entire thing. So we don't need to worry about whether we get wrong or whether we are omitting few articles in itself. Yeah. And also, you don't need to add rows and rows and rows. So you can actually have all in here as well. So if you're selecting, if you're again searching, if you want to search cost monitoring as well, let's say as an example, you can have the same field. You need to make sure it's going to be AND function, and you need to make sure that it's actually alongside the fields, all fields, not the topic, not the title. We are searching from all fields. And then you can say cost monitoring. And I would say an asterisk, just to say cost monitoring, cost monitors, whatever component it has,
Okay.
would be considered into it. So depending on what you have to do, you can actually integrate many things, right? You can
Sorry, before we move forward, can we please search and check how many articles it's showing now? Earlier quantity surveying, it was showing 14,000 something.
yeah. So let me search this. So it comes back to 19 articles. So that becomes more than easy for
So
you
the
to.
researcher know that they need to go through with those 19 articles only,
Yes,
and that's it. So that is much more manageable.
that's much more manageable. Exactly.
Okay, now we can go back on the
Yeah.
search. Um,
And yeah.
and now you got the in the recent search as well.
So what I usually tend to do, again, since this is 19 articles, I don't really need to do much on it. But I would again look at publications and years of publications just to have a rough idea. If not, all hope is not lost. We can do a thorough analysis afterwards as well. We can do the filtration afterwards as well. So since we have already done this, I'm going to do a little bit of an analysis of the 19 reports that we have. Right? So we can actually click this analyze results and see what we have, right? So whenever you click it, you can see what are the Web of Science categories that the research are published in, right? So you can see 7 of those articles or whatever research pieces have been published under management. So it has a component of management.
So is it the management journals or cost management or quantity surveying management?
No, so we are talking about Web of Science categories. So Web of Science has each category. It's not a journal. Yeah. So we'll come to journals. It does have a journal impact as well, and sort of like journal categorization as well. But here, it's just the Web of Science categories. Remember, even in early, I was pulling a list down and say, right, you can select whatever categories you want as well. So in that Web of Science, these are again subdivided categories that you look into. Okay. So as an example, let's say that you are looking at quantity survey and cost management, but you're looking at it from a civil engineer's point of view or civil engineering discipline. Then you can say, right, there are only 5 articles there. So you have a 19, sort of like a data set, but you'll be prioritizing on these 5 articles, right? And then you can actually view records and carry out that. I think I clicked the other one, but you get what I mean.
So basically, this type of search can give a excellent idea about the inclusion and exclusion of the research paper. Exactly. which is the typical research methodology in literature review research.
Exactly.
What we are including, what we are excluding, and those are the keywords we have used to write maybe the entire literature review or maybe just one section of the literature review. Yeah. So for each section, there is a keyword, the Boolean operators you are using, and you got the inclusion. Okay, altogether you have found like 100 articles. Out of those 100, only 5 or 10 was related with the civil engineering, and those you analyze those 5 articles. That's it.
Exactly. And talking about the methodology in itself, so this rationale, the entire whatever minutes that I've been speaking about and getting these articles, this becomes your methodology. This is literally your methodology, explanation of your methodology. This is what you should write under your methodology section on how we got these results and how you're justifying that as well. Yeah.
So students can create a diagram as well, what process they have taken
exactly
to come up with those 5 articles, or how did they find those five articles, because they need to justify, okay, this is the criteria they have used. That was step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and that can become their research design, a diagram, a flow chart that, okay, this is what they have used, and those are the 5 articles they have found. Good. Exactly. Excellent.
Yeah. And to be honest, this is the tip of the iceberg when you consider the analysis. So yes, you can actually start up your entire thing. But then again, if you look at different types of analysis made available, you can search what sort of publications have been going throughout, what's the years, what's the sort of like implications of research underpinning. As you can see, there is like a sort of like a segregated type of analysis here, sort of like publications list here. So what's the verdict? What's the analysis behind it? And what's the reason? So obviously, 2020, 2022, yes, the COVID struck. But then again, did something happen economy-wise? Cost implication, quantity serving, was there implication? Obviously, when you talk about new reforms and economic, sort of like the beginning of the recession that's been announced with economic, regulations and financial settings. So you can actually link what you already know with what data you have here, and then create a very good picture that will be concrete, solid on your methodology. So I usually do this, and then again, I think we can sort of like signpost to one of our published papers on how we did those kinds of stuff, and especially the scientometrics that we have done. So again, looking through what of these things. So this becomes the basic foundations.
Since you mentioned about the publications, nowadays, as we understand, most of the journals, the first thing they look at the methodology. What is the methodology? Is it very simple, plain methodology and is not being justified? There is not solid enough. They just reject the paper there and then. So methodology is very, very important, which is the critical part of the paper. They need to know what methodology we have adopted. Even we look at the guideline of any journal publication, the other guidelines, which is writing about publication through either we go for Emerald or Science Direct or any other journal, they all have the guidelines, and they always focus on methodology, that if the methodology is right, then everything in your paper is right. I think that is the general understanding. So that is why this type of methodology is important, because most of the people, they focus on methodology about data collection and data analysis. The primary research, not the literature review. And literature review is the first part of your research, isn't it?
Exactly.
If that is not right, then obviously your data analysis, data collection first, it might not be right. And then your data analysis, if collection is the data you collected, that is not right, then how can the analysis will be? If your literature review is not right, how can you come up with the questions? How can you come up with the the tools and techniques that what you are going to use to collect the data? So that everything can go wrong. So I think this is a very good tool to work on this type of thing. Now, Kasun, there is one more thing. Since post-pandemic, there is a trend.
Yes.
That most of the people are looking for the publication during pandemic or after pandemic. So let's say 2020 till now. That has become a trend, and there are a lot of papers, a lot of journals are working on. Even though when we give assessments in our modules, we are also talking about 2020 and after 2020 post-pandemic thing. So do we have those type of filters, like the publication here? You were just showing the publication. How can somebody filter? Can we go through with it very quickly from the
it's not just through basic. Sorry, I'm always looking at that. Right. So since it's I'm not entirely sure whether we can do a thorough context here, because we only have 19 articles. If I go to, let me do a bigger one, a bigger context, and
let's keep it quantity surveying.
Right. I was going to do NSS, our background.
Okay.
Yeah. You'll be very surprised as well. So let's say topic is National Student Survey.
Okay.
And then we can see all fields. We can say improvement. Or let's say improve. Or enhance. Or develop, let's say. Right. So we are looking at National Student Survey and how we can develop whatever context from National Student Survey, right? So I don't want to add the other rows. We can do that here as well, but I'm trying to get a bigger sort of like a data set to show you how filtration could work, right? Let's see whether.
If we need, we can add another row. Okay, for example, in UK, for example, in West Midland or London, or
Yes.
maybe
You can
short.
filter it by author. You can filter it by publication titles. You can even sort of like filter it by funding agencies even. So you know there's grants applications and there are sort of like matrices there. So you can actually categorize them even there. Author keywords, DOI numbers, editors, language, again PubMed ID. So they have different sort of IDs. So even Web of Science categories, you can. That's what I said. You can categorize it through many different criteria here. So the more you want to go into in detail and the more you refine you want your data set, you can do so by doing here. The only thing you need to worry about is the functions that you're going to choose, and then what sort of criteria that you're searching those for. It's sort of like in keywords in, right?
Okay. Yep.
So let me get a bigger sample, right? So we have 7,454, which is not a huge, but again, it's a little bit big.
Yeah.
So what I want is
Can't go through with all 7,000 papers one by one. That is going to take a lot of time. And if somebody is writing a dissertation, which is just 3 months time, they get not possible until they're using some kind of tool to,
yeah. Which, if you want, I can signpost that as well, very little, like in 2-3 minutes as well.
Okay.
But you can actually filter it through here as well. As you can see, there are 150 pages here. Each page is 50 articles. So 50 multiplied 100, that amount of data set that you have here.
Yeah.
You can sort it here. You can sort it by relevance. You can sort it by recently edition. You can sort it by conference titles. You can sort it by the author names, whatever the context it is. However, I would like to focus more on what's happening at the left-hand side here. So this is the official sort of like the filtration, sort of like the advanced filtration tabs here. So what we can do here is we can actually have quick filters here, review articles. If you just want review papers, not proper articles, not proper research. So if it's just review papers, you can highlight it. If it's just open access, if it's early access, if it's just open publisher invited reviews, so you can have quick filters as that, right? So you can tick whatever you want. More importantly, looking at publications here. So obviously post-pandemic, the entire education sector had a paradigm shift, whether it be digitization, whether it be AI, whether it's be overall social concepts behind it, whether it's be mental support, whether it's support in general, assessment, whatever context it is. So if you want, we can actually select from 2020, and that becomes your justification for your methodology as well. And again, I'm signposting to that as well. So this becomes the filter. What you're going to do becomes your justification for your methodology, and say refine. Let's see how many you get. So that 7,000 articles came down to 2,715 articles.
So out of 7,000, are about 3,000 articles being written in just last 5 years.
Yeah.
Okay. So
before 5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So almost there.
Yeah. So which is about more than 30%?
Yeah, more all. Yeah.
Yeah. Because in the last 5 years, there has been so many changes, and that is why I think people are focusing on last 5 years, 6 years, since 2020 till now, on the research side. And even though when we talk about research, the research is outdated within 3-year time. So that is why we need to look at the current and authentic references which is being published now, in 2024, maybe in March 2024, Feb 2024, and we can shortlist all those articles over here, which is a very good thing. And Google Scholar also gives that idea that you can choose the year, but I think this is kind of much better filtration over here, where
Yeah.
you can get articles from 2024. Does it give articles from months as well? March, June, July, or
Um,
just the year?
Not entirely, not entirely here. But you can do some further analysis and get it into that detail. But again, if you're looking at these sort of like data sets, we are looking at much bigger data sets. So it doesn't really, it's
Yeah.
not really viable to have like a monthly sort of like a disparity within each data set in itself. So what we usually tend to do, and most predominantly, we usually categorize it by years. However, I have seen, because medicines and medical journals tend to do sort of like very intensive systematic reviews. I have seen that they have done quartile as well, depending on the regenerations and the relevance of their subject matter. But that again, it's something different that they need to do a separate analysis on
Mm.
corporates. Yeah. Yeah. So you can filter it by publication years. What I tend to do is I focus more on articles, which are research pieces, rather than early access or proceeding papers or review articles. So it might come down a little. So from that 200 was again taken out into context. Also, we can narrow it down by languages, which is again something I and most researchers are predominant in doing as well. And yeah, you can narrow it by countries. You can narrow it by funding agencies, group,
There
whatever context it is.
are a lot of filtration here, a lot of which could
It's
be really useful. If
yeah,
somebody's research is in very niche topic, looking for, let's suppose,
yeah.
something quantity surveying in Manchester, so they can drill it down to Manchester
Pinpoint.
or pinpoint
Yeah,
whatever they need to do.
yeah,
So another very good thing I can see on the right hand side, it shows references and it shows citations, how many citations that
yes,
they present. So we can filter it down with the number of citations, which is the most cited papers,
yeah.
and also can see how many papers they have referenced.
I'm going to show another thing that will blow your mind as well. You're talking about references, but yeah, let me come to that after. Before just giving this one important tip, I think
Yeah,
most people
sure.
don't understand this as well. And this is a very new thing that's picking up pace. We tend to focus more on now sustainable development goals. So any research paper that you focus or any research paper that you look at, now people are looking at how it's aligned to sustainable development goals, because our entire policy in a global perspective is edging towards or is underpinned by those sustainable development goals. As an example, we did some work in pedagogy, and it basically relates to Sustainable Development Goal 4. So if you filter it down, you can actually see most, so like it can actually narrow down what are you looking at and what sort of new areas are there for that specific development goals. And then focus on what are the future, what's the future for that development goal, what needs to be done for further progress as well. So you can actually refine and focus it and narrow it down in detail through here as well.
Mm,
Yeah.
that's something new for me as well, Kasun. That
Yeah.
very impressive. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know that. Okay, yes, we are moving towards sustainable development goal, but I didn't knew that we can filter down papers over here. So if we filter down with the sustainable development goals, I think it's going to be very less.
It's going to narrow down as well. It's going to narrow down. So depending on what sort of, so as an example, if you're looking at, let's say, marine, so like marine activity, I don't know. All right, so quality
Quality.
education. So
Yeah.
there's 777. So 777 articles on quality education, good health and well-being, and again, PubMed sort of like databases incorporating it in here. So education related to health, medications, medicine. So those kinds of components. They have 1,000 odd articles there. Gender equality. So again, coming from educational, which is a niche area, gender equality, and then looking at how it come towards educational perspective. So if you select those kinds of stuff, and no poverty, those kinds of, all those can give you a very good idea on what context it is. And also, One thing that you can do if you are a researcher and if you're looking towards niche areas to look at, you can look at what's not here as well. So as an
Okay.
example, you see that there are many articles written here, but you can see, right, life below water, marine sort of educations, there's not much there. So that's why I picked up that as well. So marine related educations, the components, so energy related.
So in a way, it's giving you the gap as well, where the gap is. So which topic
Exactly.
you should pick.
Exactly. So if you're looking at providing your introduction as well, not just the literature review, even providing your rationale, looking at the background and justifying whole your dissertation as it is, you can do so just without even looking at anything. You can just do it by your filtration process in itself.
So let's suppose I want to start a new research. Let's say I want to start a PhD,
Yeah.
and I want to find a research gap in any of the area.
Yeah.
How can I go for this one without? Can I check it without searching anything, or do I have to search the initial
Okay.
keywords?
So obviously, if you're doing a PhD or something like that, you need to have some sort of like a framework. So what I would advise is you search your framework by using the matrices that we talked about earlier. And then you can actually come down, look at sustainable development goals and look at how can you refine your idea. So it's not like starting everything from scratch, because that's not what this tool is there for. That's not how this tool is used for. What you can do is you can make your area, you can make your rationale or justification much more refined rather than building up from scratch.
So over here, we were looking at the NSS results, NSS related papers.
Yeah.
So when we gone down to the sustainability development, we looked at
Right. Yeah.
the numbers there.
Yeah.
So in quality education is 777 So we can go to see all to find the gap over there.
Yes. So I just refined that,
Okay.
but if you want to make more refinements, you can actually, cancel this.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And then go towards, right, select this, see all, and then look at what your focus area is. Because whatever you do, looking at any research from not even today onwards, it's yesterday's news. This is yesterday's news anyways. So whatever research you do, it's best practice to align it with the sustainable development goals. So whatever you are doing, so whatever you do in here, what filtration or what sort of analysis, prior analysis that you do here, make sure that you're not putting yourself off course. What you're doing is clearly relevant in time.
Okay.
So, an additional benefit that you're going to get. Well, you were talking about citations, and I told you were jumping the gun a little because I'm going to blow your mind a little. We have just behind or right next to analyze results, which we did earlier. Remember, we looked at Web of Science categories. So that's where we clicked the analyze results. Right next to it, there is something called citation reports. So if you click here, it's going to run the entire data set on the number of citations and then what is the most influential articles made available. Mind you, it's not doing a thorough research here. As an example, if you're looking at scientometric analysis, it's not looking at total link strengths, overall relationships. It's not looking at that. It's counting numbers. But even though it gives you a thorough idea on what's the amount of a data set, how much citations are there. Sorry.
How this type of analysis, the citation analysis, can be beneficial for the students who are writing dissertation first time. They are not doing, big research like scientometric analysis or any other analysis. It's a very simple analysis.
Yeah. So what I would do is, even if for a dissertation, these are the most influential and reference cited articles. So those are the most influential. I would start, even without writing a word on my dissertation, I would start to go through these most influential articles and try to find out what the context is, just for understanding of a background, right? And if you can see here, you can see even one of the first most influential article here, which is having a total of 1,944 of overall citations, is global trends in physical activity of da 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 da. So it's a social scientist made of a global trend, right? And even if you can say, medical students learning accounts, medical students, all methods of risk behaviors, and again, national service, and something that I was going to talk about here is you might need to filter more things, because you can see that here tobacco produce, right? It is a national survey, but it's not relevant here. So that's why I'm saying, yes, it is a very good tool, but you need to still refine it. You need to still filter it and get your things in order. So
Yeah.
that happens during that filtration process.
Need to have proper keywords, a proper plan, what
Exactly.
your research is about.
Yeah.
And for that, you might need to have the general keyword, the general topic idea, which is the higher education. It could be higher education because National Student Survey is related with higher education. Higher education, National Student Survey, in management studies or construction studies or whatever, built environment or whatever.
Yeah.
And then you might have UK universities, um, or some specific, like maybe a specific town or whatever.
Yeah.
It can filter more.
It,
Okay.
it can actually, my general guidance towards my dissertation students is, yeah, you need to have at least three keywords in your framework. As an example, we talked about quantity surveying being one keyword. Let's say cost management or monitoring becomes another keyword, or let's say circular economics or life cycle analysis becomes a third keyword, right? However, if you look at these kinds of data sets, those three keywords are not enough. So I would add another keywords until I get my refined data set. So I would add location as let's say UK or Manchester, right?
Yeah.
I would say post-COVID context, right? And those are all functions of or, not and, right? We are filtering it through in detail. Yeah. So it actually goes back to that golden truth. Your data set, your research is as good as whatever you search.
Yeah.
So you need,
By the way, to come up with that keywords and the title, I already had a video on this YouTube channel, which is how to come up with your aim objectives and your literature review structure, which will give you the keywords for your literature review as well. So you can take those keywords, put it there, and try to search for it. So that will become much more specific. Where in that video we have talked about product, we have talked about place, we have talked about the people involved in your research, which could be the beneficiaries of the research. So for example, your research is about um, quantity surveying, and something cost management related with the beneficiaries, which is the quantity surveyors, and in the UK construction sector. So the product is there, the benefits, the beneficiaries are there, which is the quantity surveyors, the place is there, which is UK, and of course the topic is quantity surveying and the cost management. So you got all these things, and you can use those keywords, shuffling those, and identify the most relevant articles for you. It's just 30 minutes video. If you take a piece of pen and paper, and you have a tentative title for your dissertation, just keep that title in front of you and follow that video. It will tell you how to come up with the aim, objectives, and your structure of the literature review.
oh,
I will put the link in the description.
yeah, I was just going to say, if you put a pop-up banner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So shall I start now?
Yeah, so citations. So we were talking about citation. I think that is a very good idea. So citation analysis, which could be again the criteria for inclusion of those articles, that you
Yeah.
are looking for the most cited papers in your dissertation or in your PhD thesis as well. Sometimes in your PhD viva, that is a very common question. What are the major
Mm.
theories or major studies you have looked at? And you can say, look, these are the papers, these are the authors
Yeah.
who have more than that number of citations. Like over here, 200 citation, 500 citation. These are the most cited papers which you have used. So that become your main theory in your article. That could be really good idea for your research. You're writing dissertation, or you're writing, if some of the dissertation also have vivas as well, in
Yeah,
many universities they do presentation.
ours do. In our university, we do have a viva at the
Okay.
end of the
So that,
dissertation.
that is the most common question, isn't it?
And to be honest, our viva finished last week, and that was the question that we've been asking. That was a common question for all the students.
Yeah, that is the common question.
Yeah. And it's not just from me, it's from the entire academic board as well. So it's a very general and a common question. And even now, we see that people are struggling to justify that, which is really, it would be a piece of cake, if you just looked at and gone through this database and, really looked at and obviously reflected back in your dissertation properly. You need to write it up properly. But again, the methodology behind this is very simple once you get to know it. So yeah, and one other thing I wanted to talk about in citations is, it gives you an overall. So if you click a certain article, it gives you a total network and the time cited. And one of the best thing that it does is it gives you a classification as well. What's the basis of citing? Is it with a similar background? Is it a similar basis? Or is it as a supported article that has been cited? So it gives a very, very thorough overview as well, which even the earlier Web of Science platform didn't have this matrix.
So that's another criteria for inclusion and exclusion.
Exactly. And it gives you a much thorough idea, because we know, yes, in Google Scholar, one of the things that they do is they just count the number of citations, and that's the entirety of that analysis in itself. Here, they don't just count it. They do an sort of like an underpinning rationale on finding out what influence these types of research. So as an example, yes, this is one of the key cited papers in here, and you can see, yes, it's well above, and it's above average, and categorization of the citation impact is normal, and citation impact is da 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 da. Also, you might think that, or it might be because of this amount of citations, but no, it actually looks at a very holistic overview of what's happening and talks about the entire impact. So if you go towards the citation, sort of like the search we have earlier, right? Yeah. Right. So let's select one of our own, right? And if you look at matrix panels, we know that it has still a very low in citations report. But then again, it still says that this paper, even though our citation numbers are very low, that means people have not cited our work, our impact for this study is very well beyond above average. So you might even see, I couldn't find a paper as well. So you might even, I found one in a different analysis that I was doing. So it had like 200 odd citations, but it still said beyond average. That means it didn't have any impact, even though it has been cited 200 odd times. So this becomes a very thorough, that's why I said it's very validated. It's very quality controlled and quality oriented as well. So yeah.
Even I looked at the citations on that paper. How many citations showing, Kasun?
I think we got just 3 there. It was a very recent study we did.
Yeah, on Google Scholar, it was showing.
Should be more than
4, maybe 3, maybe 3.
It might be even. Yeah.
I was checking the citations today only. Yeah, that is guys. This is our paper, which we have done already. So 3 citations, which is above average based on the journal citations, or maybe based on the overall citations, how we are getting citations on our paper. That is why I think it's showing above average, which is good thing.
Yeah, and then again, it's not just about the count. It talks about, again, the impact, overall impact. So let's assume it's been done in a very sort of like a very secluded or a very niche area as well. If they don't find enough keywords like what we have done, as an example, one of the analysis we do is interpretive structural modeling. and that is a niche area in education. So if that becomes a key criteria, so that becomes sort of like a key emphasis on impact.
Okay.
So
That's
then, and again, yeah, you can find trends to find out what sort of things you want to. And again, that's a different keyword analysis in itself, but you can do it in Web of Science. Yeah.
okay. That's good. Is there
And
anything else you want to show on?
finally, if you want to again download full links, the download allocations have been given here. There are more information provided here, sort of like the criteria, the reference articles, the appearances in references, and yeah, you know.
Okay. I think I think it is time to end this podcast. So we can have another podcast on how we can use those references from Web of Science to import in Mendeley or somewhere else, and how can we use through Mendeley and all these things. What do you say? I think there are a lot of podcasts with you, Kasun. I can see
Let's see.
and
Let's see. Yeah.
obviously, we are going to do some face-to-face podcast as well, whenever possible.
Yeah.
It's not just this, because we are doing a lot of research work. I think that could be beneficial. Some of the in-depth things, because we try to kept it basic as
As
we can
minimal, generic as
for
possible.
the master or undergraduate student. Maybe we can do a podcast for the PhD students later on, which is more in-depth for their studies. But again, this is for the PhD. This can be used for the PhD as well. The basic understanding, the people who are on just year one on PhD, that could be really good. So, how was your experience, Kasun? Did you enjoy the podcast?
Yes. So yeah, and to be honest, thank you very much for hosting this. In a sort of like I didn't feel that I was presenting anything or I was doing anything at all. This was very flowing, and it was a very relaxing environment as well. So thank you very much for that as well. And to be honest, yeah, I think it's our due diligence that we need to give something back to the community of what we have learned as well. And I know you've supported me throughout, and yeah, and vice versa, we have people supporting us in our journey. So yeah, I'm happy to be a part of that, giving to the broader society.
Thank you very much. This is, I think, this is the idea of this YouTube channel, because as you have been an international student, I have been an international student, so we understand what are the challenges, and we are trying to support the students who are coming to UK. And I believe that is the similar story in Canada, Australia, or any other place they are going. So we are trying to support them as much as we can. We gain the knowledge, we got the experience, so why not give back? The only thing is, people, they have to watch it, and people, they have to subscribe and share it with other people. So again,
Goes
thank
back
you very
to
much. Sorry.
goes back to saying that how network is important in our previous video course, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you
Please
very much.
subscribe. Please subscribe. Please subscribe and share it with other people. So thank you very much, Kasun. I'll see you soon in another podcast, and we'll talk about some other application for the students and how can they do analysis and all these. Thank you.
Thank you very much.